questions haunt every life, writes Andy Crouch. The first, what are we meant to be? The second, why are we so far from what we're meant to be? Hello and welcome to Restoring the Soul, a podcast dedicated to helping you close the gap from what you're meant to be and what keeps you from being all that. I'm your producer, Brian Beatty. Thanks for listening. On this edition of Restoring the Soul, we're pleased to bring you an encore conversation with Rob Mathis. Rob is an Emmy Award-winning, Grammy-nominated, Tony-nominated music producer, composer, arranger, singer-songwriter, keyboardist, and guitarist. The list of names that Rob has worked with is extraordinary, including production and songwriting collaborations with Sting on his last 3 albums. As an arranger, Rob has written orchestrations for artists all over the stylistic spectrum, from Jay-Z, Elton John, Bruce Springsteen, Tony Bennett, Yo-Yo Ma, and even Panic at the Disco. In part 1 of Michael's interview with Rob, we'll discover why he feels closer to God listening to Bach than a Sunday morning sermon. We'll also learn what it's been like to collaborate with Stevie Wonder and other renowned artists, and what lies behind truly great songwriting and musical production. So without any further delay, here's your host, Michael John Cusick.
Rob Mathis, thank you so much for taking time to be on the program today.
It's a pleasure.
You have performed with so many different people and a lot of big names in a lot of different genres of music. You've been an arranger, a composer, a producer. Names like Sting and Bono and Bruce Springsteen and Luciano Pavaorotti come to mind.
It's pretty eclectic, hasn't it?
Pretty eclectic. Yet, I heard you say on your video, Beyond the Music, that you would trade all of that if you could not be a songwriter. You'd give up all of that because you just want to write songs. Talk to me about what songwriting means to you.
Well, what I meant to them is that when I was talking to kids at Brigham Young and University of Utah, and what I meant was, a lot of people have asked me when they hear my records, Rob, would you just rather do that, all the time, kind of be a pop star? And when I was in high school, I did think that I was going to be a singer-songwriter and just do that all year round. But music has been such an abiding thing in my life. It's been every moment of every day. I just think and breathe music, that when I, discovered Mahler and Beethoven and Ellington and all this, becoming an arranger and writing a big horn chart on an R&B song, or writing an orchestration for Renee Fleming, the great opera singer, that's what a wonderful thing to be able to do that. And yet I've been able to funnel some funds from that work over the last 20 years into continually making my own records. But I had 3 kids. I married an incredible woman, and it's difficult to be a pop star when you're a family man and you like working in a bunch of different genres, and you're busy watering a lot of other people's gardens at the same time. But what I did say to the kids was not, I would give it all up if I could just be a songwriter. Rather, if I knew that in order to work with those great people, I would have to give up songwriting, I wouldn't have done it. Meaning that my work as a writer for myself and as a composer, I've always believed and still believe makes me better for them. When I'm working with Sting and he wants me to solve a problem on a song, or if I'm writing a song with him. I mean, one of the strongest songs off the last Ship record we wrote together, called Practical Arrangement, which Branford Marsalis has since covered. I'm better for him because I've been writing my own music since I was a boy. And if I had to give that up and only be on that treadmill of writing for other people, I would have said no.
You started performing and writing songs very, very young, and you also started touring and had a lot of success early on.
Well, you're kind. I mean, when I was young, when I was just about 20, I toured with Chuck Mangione, the great jazz flugelhorn player, who's not as well known now, but I mean, he's one of those rare guys who had a huge pop hit with an instrumental.
Feels So Good.
Feels So Good, yeah.
And then the 84 Olympic theme song.
Yep. Give It All You Got, I think that was called. Anyway, so that was a nice thing, and I played at the Empire Club in my early 20s on 42nd and Lex, And no, 48th and Lex, and Chris Bodie, the trumpet player, was in the band. Andy Schnitzer, who's now Paul Simon's main tenor player, was in the band. Mike Davis went on to play with the Rolling Stones. The drummer is now the drummer on the Carole King musical, and played with Hiram Bullock for years. The bass
from
player,
Letterman.
yeah,
The guitarist.
and the bass player played from this band at the Empire Club. It eventually played for me when I musically directed Vanessa Williams tours. So that was a cauldron of musicality. It was incredible, and I started writing when I was very, very young. My parents are both musicians. Dad's a classically trained clarinetist, but secret Bob Dylan and Beatles fan. And Mom teaches Chopin and Beethoven. And so I just got into it very early. I loved it very, very early. And very grateful for it. I mean, I feel like it's all a gift, you know? I mean, music. I mean, to me, I know this sounds sacrilegious, but instead of hearing a fire and brimstone sermon about the 4th chapter of John, sometimes I get closer to God by listening to Mahler's 9th Symphony. I mean, that sounds very convenient. It's like, you know, you talk to the Christian community, they're like, well, you gotta be Sunday morning, you should be in church. And I would agree with that. But sometimes for me, listening to Bach gets me closer to the throne room, you know.
So say more about how music touches your soul.
I remember meeting a relative of mine, Tammy, my wife. Her sister's husband has a sister who married a really sweet guy. And I remember trying to talk to him about music at one point. And he's a numbers guy. He's in business. He works at a bank, and he's very successful, and he's a lovely guy. But I had never spoken to anybody less musical in my life, and I think he would admit it. He's like, I don't listen to a lot of music. What do you like? Well, I'm not a big music fan. And I just couldn't understand it. It was like someone saying they didn't like comedy. They didn't like to laugh or something. Because music for me just seems to... it seems to be the elixir, the fountain. You know, it's always given me my best moments on planet Earth, just being in the midst of good or great music, you know, and it's very difficult to do. You know, I've got a lot of names on my resume, you know, Natalie Cole, Aretha Franklin, Beck, Pavarotti, Lou Reed, Yo-Yo Ma, Renee Fleming, Tony Bennett, whatever, you can go through them. In terms of great music, even with those names, in terms of great music I've made, man, I would have to say it's still rare to make really great music. You know, there are some people like Keith Jarrett, the piano player, is a great example. Keith doesn't often make good music. He always makes great music because he's one of the greatest geniuses to ever play the piano. Herbie Hancock, I would say, is the same way. You know, I would say that Springsteen has an ability with words that even in songs not a lot of people know, like there was a song off his Wrecking Ball record called Jack of All Trades. You know, just these songs that Bruce might call his B tracks that are just truer and more honest and more direct and more moving than half of what you'll hear anywhere else. So there are certain people that are in touch and making great music all the time. You know, when Sting was writing the Broadway show The Last Ship, every day he was coming up with new songs where we'd go, you know, I mean, just astonishing. Because he was in that zone. He was in that zone of writing about his childhood and the shipyards and, you know, so, but I've gone on a lot of sessions, and most of the sessions I've been a part of over the last 20 years have been people making in-tune music, in rhythm music, very accurately played music, well-written music, but great music, you know, great music that transcends the notes.
So say more about that, because that's leading me to ask, what exactly is great music?
Truly great music would be like some of those Keith Jarrett trio records, Bernstein conducting Mahler's Ninth, Abbey Road, you know, Radiohead in Rainbows is great
But
music.
You're referring to where it all comes together and there's something transcending about it. Say more what you mean by that.
Well, there's a message, there's a collective purpose behind the music. The message isn't overly hammered at or overwrought. But it's you think of the Radiohead record In Rainbows, for instance. It's a very creative band of art school students from Oxford that are smarter than they should be. But they're always searching. They're constantly searching, and there's a lot of despair in that band. I wouldn't necessarily give the record to a lot of my Christian friends necessarily, but as a musician, when I heard it, it was music about possibility and openness, and I didn't know what was going to happen next. It wasn't verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, out. And it was clearly a band of people wanting to be on the edge of what they could do and continually search out the best and most moving music they could make in their practice genre, It moved me. And when I'm in that zone trying to seek that out, it's the richest and best place I could possibly be. Working besides staying throughout the last ship was a privilege. I was next to a great creative who's blessed the world with big hit songs, but who also happens to be brilliant and deep and lyrically astonishing. And we were on the path of seeking beauty, transcendence, meaning, and it's an extraordinary experience.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Who are some of the other folks you've worked with where you've had that kind of an experience?
Well, I always love when I come in contact with people who love music with the passion that I do, and of course I've been fortunate that most of the people I'm with now are that way. But I still remember Tony Bennett when I came up, and my job with him was to basically map out vocal duets. Like if you sing with Diana Krall or Stevie Wonder, I would help map out the duets. Well, let's have Diana come in here. We have to change the key for her because her voice is a little, but then you come in on the bridge because the melody's lower on the bridge. We can stay in her key. I was kind of the map guy, the vocal duet map guy. And I remember he was talking about Judy Garland, and he found out somehow that I did not own Judy Garland at Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
And he was so sweet about it, but he got a little ticked off. He's like, "Are you kidding me? She's the greatest entertainer that's ever lived, You have to leave here right now. You've got to promise me you're going to go buy that record." And I went out and I got that record. That was a time when there were record stores. This is about 10 years ago. And I bought it and listened to it. It is transcendent. I mean, Judy Garland, for all the travails she went through in her life, she was a transcendent performer. And Springsteen, when I went to do the string charts for the Wrecking Ball record,
I just read his Born to Run. Unbelievable.
Oh, he's
book.
incredible.
His vulnerability, his honesty, his humility.
We did all this. He was working on a project that was almost Jimmy Webb, Glenn Campbell-like. Almost an Americana project, a road project where he wanted to use some of that Jimmy Webb like orchestration. And they called me in because I know Jimmy well. I've done string quartet arrangements for Jimmy Webb. I'm going to musically direct a Jimmy Webb concert at Carnegie Hall in a couple months. And so I came in and I did a bunch of arrangements. And then suddenly Bruce started writing in another genre because he was writing about the end of, I think it's Giant Stadium or the Meadowlands or something, whatever they tore down, which Wrecking Ball's about. And then he started writing about the Heartland and what working people were going through and how, this whole hillbilly elegy thing where working people want to think that either the conservatives or the liberals are going to answer their needs, and they're just struggling. They need somewhere to meet them where they live, and he wanted to write to that. And so he wrote this whole record in a matter of weeks.
Wow.
And he was on the road. He had about 40 songs written about something else. And I said, "Bruce, you're incredible. Well, how does that work?" He's like, "Well, sometimes I stick my shovel in the dirt right in front of me and and accidentally I trip and the shovel goes to the right. And I just start shoveling there." And you could tell the guy wakes up to write and writes all day and thinks all day. And I'm sure it drives Patty and the kids a little batty because he is one of those great creatives. He's one of the gifts God's given us, in the last 40 years of writing. But it's just interesting to be around that. And, of course, everybody I've worked with I think all the great people I've worked with have had that kind of... I mean, Yo-Yo Ma, the first thing I ever wrote for him was an arrangement for the centennial of the Dallas Symphony. And he was coming to play Dvorak's Cello Concerto, which is the great cello concerto. And Vanessa Williams was on the program, and she loves Harold Arlen. So it was the idea of the Dallas Symphony board for me to write arrangements for Yo-Yo to have like cello obligato lines in these great Harold Arlen songs. And so I was so daunted. I mean, this was 1999, so I'm a much better orchestrator now. I've written, 500 arrangements since then, but I agonized over it. He came in and he treated it as if it was Dvorak.
Wow.
He brought me into the room and he said, what about this? What if I bow it this way? What I do that? And he had more energy and more respect and love. And this is a giant. This is a musical giant. And this was a good arrangement, Michael. But this was not Dvorak. And so that kind of love and grace, I find I've been very fortunate. I mean, you do hear about some musicians that can be very, very gifted and very, very difficult. I've been pretty free of that. I mean, I'm sure I've had some run-ins, but...
And we won't ask.
We won't. Right, exactly. But most of it has been just a great blessing, you know.
You mentioned Stevie Wonder a couple of minutes ago, and I was channel surfing, and it was during Obama's inauguration.
Yeah.
And I stopped on the concert, the outdoor concert.
At the Lincoln Memorial.
Lincoln Memorial that you did, and I saw you sitting next to Stevie Wonder on a keyboard. And Stevie was rocking his head back and forth, and you were rocking back and forth. What was that like to direct the inaugurative concert?
My favorite record in pop history is Songs in the Key of Life.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, everyone says Abbey Road or a Stones record or maybe Dylan's Bringing It All Back Home or Highway 61.
So Sir Duke, Isn't She Lovely?
Isn't She Lovely? As Pastime Paradise... Have a Talk with God, I Wish. I mean, it's just a masterpiece. And Stevie at his best basically transcends his genre completely. I mean, he's just one of the great musicians in the history of pop music, without a shadow of a doubt. He's up there with James Brown and Prince and all these other people. And I've gotten a chance to work with him on a number of occasions in that same kind of music director mode where I'm working on a project with a bunch of different artists and Stevie's come in to play. And I've had to act with Stevie. Let me be honest. I'm not like, hey, Stevie, do this chord, do this. I'm normally the air traffic controller in that situation, and I'll play guitar. And I still remember, I will never forget MDing the Pavaorotti and Friends benefits a number of years.
Musical director.
Yeah, music director.
As opposed to the medical director.
Yeah, exactly.
Giving CPR.
Exactly, yeah. And Stevie came in and did Higher Ground, and he had the end of Higher Ground. He had this like was it was some phrase that the band could not get, and we had perhaps at that time the greatest drummer in the world playing, Steve Gadd, who any drummer will know.
Yeah, studio guy who's playing Steve.
And Steve was convinced it was in 4/4, like it was. And I said, no, Steve, you can't think of it in 4/4. However syncopated it isn't. You just got to hear the phrase. And I was right. And Stevie, Stevie, yeah, boy, that's it, and he's just a giant. I mean, what do you say? I mean, when I'm in the room with these kind of people, he came saying Fragile with Sting at Sting's 60th. He gets on stage and we all marvel. We just all are grateful we're in the room with him,
When you were a teenager writing songs and performing, did you ever imagine that you'd be working with folks like this?
I had no idea. No, I really did think I was going to be just a singer-songwriter, work on my own music. That's all I ever wanted to do. Anytime I would hear a new genre or a new master, I would want to chase it. And so I would go off on tangents. I would study Mahler's Ninth and transcribe the first movement for my mom and I to play on double piano, four-hand, two pianos. And then I would, literally imbibe Songs for Swingin' Lovers, the great Frank Sinatra record, just to check out those Nelson Riddle records.
We have a mutual friend that calls that being promiscuous with the genre.
Yes, and it's tricky. It can be said that maybe even most of the greatest artists in human history do practice within a particular language. They expand that language, but they're not trying to be eclectic. I mean, obviously, you look at Peter Gabriel or Paul Simon or Sting, artists who, we can all say have morphed and they've had their different stages of their career. But still there's that inimitable voice, and they did make it on one genre initially.
Right.
You don't get to Abbey Road and Sgt. Pepper's without She Loves Me. She loves you, yeah, and I want to hold your hand, And that's been the one, I think, sometimes my weakness is that I'm jumping around too much. But the thing I will say for myself is when I am working within these genres, it's like I know nothing else. I treat it like it is my language. I live there. And I was an iPod kid before an iPod was invented. I mean, in the front room, my dad would be listening to Peter, Paul, Mary, and Dylan. Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Bob Dylan. And my mom would be playing Chopin's Fantasy Impromptu and teaching the Beethoven Pathétique Sonata to her kids. And my uncle, who was married to my mother's identical twin sister, was a big band leader. And he was actually a big band writer, not a leader. He played like trombone with a bunch of big bands. And he was the one that said, you got to listen to these Sinatra records. And my aunt played the New York City Opera. And then I met a bunch of people growing up. My adopted aunt, Jan, was a huge Motown fan. And I still will never forget the first time at 7 years of age that I heard Never Can Say Goodbye sung by Michael Jackson.
Wow.
I mean, it was like a bolt from the blue. I mean, it was a transforming experience. That little kid singing like no one has ever sung since, except maybe Stevie. I was just a genre hopper. I just loved all this different music and followed it. And it led me to being a string arranger for people and a horn arranger for people and a choral arranger for people and an MD. My dad's a band leader. That's what he does. He teaches the band in Greenwich, Connecticut. He teaches band at 4 schools. He's now retired. But so I knew what it was like to have to corral cats. So that became a lot of my life.
So do you ever struggle being that musical air traffic controller or the guy behind the scenes with the arrangements? I know that you still perform with the Rob Mathis Band, but it sounds like most of what you do is kind of in the shadows of production. Is that hard for you?
It hasn't been, because I mean, as you know, when you work on film or something, it's the director of photography and the director of the film that has a big influence on the outcome. I mean, the Panic at the Disco record, Pretty Odd, their second record, which I produced, I'm really proud of. It's a really energetic, deep record. These kids are discovering the Beach Boys and the Beatles, and they want to go there. And we mixed it at Abbey Road, and I recorded the strings at Abbey Road, and I played harpsichord and piano and guitar on it, but I was a smart enough guy to get out of the way and to let it sound like them and not me. So no, it's all been a gift. I just see it as all, and I'm grateful for it because, we're nomads. We're troubadours. We musicians. We never know where the next gig is coming. I remember going through writing and getting to write a song with Sting, for God's sakes. I mean, my goodness. And then, having no work for about a month, being able to spend time with my family. And most of my wise friends, and certainly my Christian friends, say the right thing. They say, God will provide. He loves you. He's giving you this break to be with your family. You're a husband. You're a father. But I'm assumed I'll never work again. So I'm grateful for all of it. And it's been a privilege to be able to do my own music. As you know, Michael, I've released a record regularly for the past 20 years, and they're really good records.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of them, especially Evening Train and its sequel, Wheelbarrow, and of course, William the Angel, which I have. That song has gotten out into the ether. That song I wrote for my... Yeah,
Kathy Mattea won a Grammy for it.
Well, Kathy recorded the final song in that little song cycle, which is called William the Angel. She recorded Good News, and she won a Grammy for it. Yeah,
the actual song William the Angel.
Yes, no, she recorded Good News,
right,
which is the fourth song in the song cycle that's called William the Angel, of which the first song is William the Angel, and that's the song that I got to sing across the country 40 times at the Boston Pops. one year we toured that song, and a number of people, if you go online, you type in William the Angel, churches sing that song, and that song's gotten out there. And there are still people that fly out to see my Christmas concert just to hear that song. In fact, the one year I didn't do William the Angel, I got in a lot of trouble. I actually got letters and emails, complaints. So I've been able to do my own stuff while having the privilege of dealing with these greats,
William the Angel sits on a yellow line. William the Angel stuck in the middle of the road, staring out at his broken wing. He sheds a couple of tears, says, I haven't seen my friends, St. Paul or St. Peter, in 15 years. William the Angel sits on a yellow line, says, God, are you crazy? These humans seem a waste of my time. Well, I've flown around the world, seen many things, the victories and struggles they bear. And I tell them of your love, how you watch, how you listen. They no longer seem to care. This is my prayer before you return me to heaven. May my wing be repaired. Send me to Tokyo, Beirut, or London. It doesn't matter to me. I did what I was told. Still, I'd like to save one soul. William the Angel stands on the yellow line. There's now a state trooper wondering what's on his mind. Well, I've seen both death and destruction, sir, the cruelty of nature and of man. But when God points left, you wander right, follow your own plan. The straight yellow line. William the Angel says the answers can be simple sometimes. Why consider the smile in a baby's eye when it's wrapped in its mother's arms? And consider the sound and the look of the sky after a violent storm. You've been forewarned before he returns me to heaven. Sir, I'd like to move on to New York, Toronto, or Berlin, or even the back of your car. Peace and joy. Trooper says be careful. Haven't you got some place to go? William says no, just stay here and wait, while pointing to the remains of his wing. He is offered a ride, but says thank you, no thank you, I'm an angel to a king. And this is what I sing before he returns me to heaven. May he fix my wing, send me to Mexico City or Cape Town. It doesn't matter at all. There's always hope, I was told, and I'd like to save one soul, just one soul. Yes, I'd like to save just one soul.
Tell me about the Christmas concert. You've collaborated with some big names on that, and that's an annual thing you do for a fundraiser.
In 1993, I had the first record you ever heard me do, Michael. It's called Heart of Hearts, and it was these two song cycles. It's not available now. It's an early record. I don't disown. I mean, I'm very proud of it. It's a very contemporary Christian record, and since then I've worked in a broader zone. I've tried to be more of a, just a singer-songwriter writing about spiritual and sometimes Christian issues, but not with that moniker on it. Just so the boards are cleared and so people can enter in to this dialogue without having a label on it. Whereas Heart of Hearts was a record I wrote for my church.
And even though you're calling that a very contemporary Christian record, it is musically beyond anything I've ever heard in terms of its breadth and how eclectic it is.
Well, it's rich in classical tradition. There's a brass quintet on there. There's a song called Trouble Today, which has Latin influences. Yeah, so it was musically very, very rich. And it didn't sound like, an Amy Grant record or Stephen Curtis Chapman record. Right. As great as those records, a lot of those records are, and Stephen's amazing. But I as is Amy, what a great writer she is. But I never really listened to a lot of that music. I listened to Aretha and Radiohead. And so Heart of Hearts was the first record where I ventured into writing music for the church I was going to at the time, which is St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Darien. And I just always loved Christmas music. I always loved it. All kinds of Christmas music, from carols to Vaughan Williams. And so I wrote these... Oh, wow, look at that. Someone got into a car, Michael, and the car locked in with my phone, and that's why we heard that music. Anyway, so...
Technology.
Yeah. So what was I saying? So I wrote Heart of Hearts for my church, and it was based around issues around Christmas, the birth of innocence coming into the world to transform it. And I always loved Christmas music so much that we just started giving a concert in 1993 at a church on a hill in Greenwich, Connecticut. And because I'd been with Chuck Mangione and Kathy Mattea had won the Grammy for Good News, a bunch of people came to it. And they loved it. And we did the whole Heart of Hearts song cycle. And then next year I'd released William the Angel. And so we did all of William the Angel and some of Heart of Hearts. And it became a thing. People loved, "You going to do the Christmas concert this year?" So this is now 93, 94, and then finally we went to Purchase College, which is a state university in New York on the Connecticut and New York border, and they have an amazing performing arts center that everyone goes to, Yo-Yo Ma, the New York Philharmonic. It's an amazing place. And I started my career really started taking off. I started working with Phil Ramone and Vanessa Williams and Pavaorotti and George Michael and Natalie Cole. And I was working as an assistant and associate producer of sorts with the great Phil Ramone, who basically, if it weren't for Phil, I don't know where I'd be now. I mean, with the gift he gave me of bringing me to all these situations. And so the Christmas concert, I started doing arrangements of things in the mode of Ellington and Bob Marley, and I started writing more music, and I put out Evening Train, and the Christmas concert expanded musically. I got a 6-piece horn section, and I brought these great gospel singers, James D. Train Williams and Van East Thomas, in. And then when I wrote these Christmas songs for Vanessa Williams, she did the concert, and we invited Michael McDonald from the Doobie Brothers, David Sanborn, the great alto saxophone player, Ossie Davis, who read Langston Hughes' Christmas poems, and we filmed that. A great guy in Stanford named Mike McCary, who ran a company called Eagle Vision, he loved the concert, and he filmed it, and it went out on PBS. And then the concert really took off, and it became a 3-night thing, a 3-concert thing. And now we're 24 years later, and it's every year the concert gets deeper and richer. We've got Will Lee from The Letterman Show on bass, Sean Pelton from Saturday Night Live on drums, Joe Bonadio, my longtime collaborator.
I just saw Joe do percussion with Mark Cohn.
Mark Cohn, yeah.
Colorado.
Yeah, well, Joe plays with Mark and has played with Sting, did The Last Ship with Sting. And all these great people come. And the horn players I talked to you earlier in this interview about, Andy Snitzer from Paul Simon and Mike Davis from the Stones. Don Harris from Nile Rodgers' band plays lead trumpet. And so it's just become this thing where if you're in the New York area around Christmas time and you come to that concert, you're going to hear music making at the very highest level, I think. And I'm not giving myself credit for that. I mean, I do think my arrangement work and my songwriting is strong, but the guys I have up on that stage are just extraordinary. The guys and gals. So that's a focal point of my year.
So thank you for listening to another episode of Restoring the Soul. We want you to know that Restoring the Soul is so much more than a podcast. What we're all about is helping couples and individuals get unstuck. You know how some people go to counseling or marriage therapy for months or even years and never really get anywhere? Our intensive programs help clients get unstuck in as little as 2 weeks. To learn more, visit restoringthesoul.com. That's restoringthesoul.com.